Greyhawk Grognard here. If you like the video, please make sure to like and subscribe. Hit the bell so you get notified. You know, all that other good stuff that all the channels say. And feel free to visit my blog and my Patreon. Links are down below. Now, enjoy the show. Hey everybody, Greyhawk Grognard here. And first of all, please accept my apologies that it's been a while since my last video. I've been taking a class for work and it's sucked up all of my free time, but I'm happy to report that I am now officially a certified Lean Six Sigma black belt, which is a big deal in the project management and process improvement field, so I'm really excited about that. But now that that's behind me, I can get back to doing the stuff that I love, which is talking about Greyhawk. And I thought we would continue with our read-through of the Gold Box books. I know it's been a while since I've done one of these, but I wanted to pick up the series because I think it's a worthwhile thing to go through, and I hope you're enjoying it. So the next section of the glossography that we have here is Adventures on the World of Greyhawk. And this is a collection of basically adventure seeds, adventure ideas. There's not a lot of detail in them. A lot of it is left up for the DM to to flesh out and stuff and such. But there's a couple of things here that are really noteworthy. The first one that we have here is Quest of the Mist Golem, where there's a there's a magic user who had threatened the town and was banished, and now he's up north. And the adventurers have to go because he's been threatening to destroy everybody in the town in 63 days because he's discovered how to create what's called a mist golem. And, so the PCs have to go up past Ayus and, into the fens and so forth. And it's a fairly standard scenario, but in a lot of ways it reminds me of White Plume Mountain, where there's a magic user off somewhere causing mischief, and the adventurers have to go and stop him before he does something horrible to the city. So I thought the parallel was a little on point. The Werewolves of the Menowood is, again, just a fairly standard go into the forest and stop a band of werewolves. That for me is a little outstanding because they have some very interesting NPCs described in the forest there. There's groups of treants, and there's one of the treants is a blighted elm treant whose disease has rotted its heartwood, causing it to hate all animal life, including people. So it's got some interesting things like that. The werewolves are led by a vampire werewolf, which is also kind of interesting. But on the whole, again, it's basically a list of interesting or standard NPC encounters in a forest. The real standout, of course, is the Lost Passage of the Sulois, which is how the Sul people fled the ruins of the Sul Imperium after the Reign of Colorless Fire destroyed it. And it talks about how the wizard Slarotin created this passage under the mountains so that the people could escape, and one of the tribes of people got trapped in there, and over the course of the next millennia have developed this very weird underworldly society, and there's this giant worm that they worship, and it's very, very cool, very evocative. This is the one that seems to have captured the imagination of a lot of different people. It's been brought up in several articles in Dragon Magazine over the years. It was even referenced in the Living Greyhawk Gazetteer and the Expedition to the Ruins of Greyhawk. So it's one of those things that's kind of really been adopted by a lot of fans of the setting because it is just such a cool part of the ancient history and fits in so well. This is one of those things that it's not just a generic adventure hook. This is something that is very specific to the world of Greyhawk and is tied into the history of the setting. And I think that's what gives it more cachet than some of the others that they have here. There's the Jungle of Lost Ships, which is a very, kind of an interesting idea. As the title implies, there's sort of this Sargasso Sea off of the Lordship of the Islands, and the players find out how to get there. And then they try to basically have to get out again. And there's there's descriptions of some of the weird ships that are there, including the implication that one is like a World War II destroyer. There's some interesting stuff in there. And the Copper Raider, I think, is a really cool idea. It basically features a copper dragon that has been possessed by a demon and loses all control when there's a copper caravan going by. He thinks it's an insult, so he attacks the caravans. I just think that is a very clever idea and a nice inversion of what you would expect from a good copper dragon, and a really cool explanation for it. I thought that was very cool. And this, the last one is the Stolen Seal, which is very interesting to me because it plugs directly into what we know of the politics going on in the northeast corner of the Flanaess, where the barony of Ratic has made these alliances with some of the barbarian tribes up there. And the seal that symbolizes those alliances is stolen, and the PCs have to recover it in order to maintain the alliance, the fragile peace in the north between Ratic and the barbarians. And I think that's just a beautiful idea. Once again, it plugs directly into the setting. It'll work in other settings, but it's made for this. It's directly applicable to events that we are going to read about in the guide to the World of Greyhawk. And so that's what I really like about it, is the fact that it is so tied to the setting itself. After that, we've got adventure locales, which basically gives the hex locations for all of the different published adventures that had been published up to this point. So we know where the Slave Lord's adventures happen and where the Ghost Tower of Inverness is, and so forth. This is also really nice for defining what is and is not a Greyhawk module, at least up until the publication of the Gold Box. So you can see what is not here is as kind of a guide to what is not originally intended to be in the World of Greyhawk. And part of that is In Search of the Unknown and Keep on the Borderlands, you will note, are not in here. So I know a lot of people have put them in, and in fact the original publication of In Search of the Unknown gave locations in the World of Greyhawk for it, but the fact that it was not included here is a very clear indication that at the time Gygax didn't want those modules associated with Greyhawk, which is kind of I think it's a pretty interesting thing. Then we've got a couple of tables here for determining where you were born, and in addition, what languages and what your alignment is most likely to be. I'm not really sure too many people use this sort of table. I believe these had their genesis in some of Len Lakofka's stuff in Dragon Magazine that then got put in here, much like the weather table did. We've got the same thing here for demi-humans, and it's kind of it's a neat little thing if you are putting together a kind of a random generated party and you want to see where folks are from. I could see that being useful. And then we've come to one of my favorite sections, which is Personages and Quasi-Deities. I love the idea that there are these not quite gods and yet much more than adventurer types of individuals running around in the World of Greyhawk. And in that first introductory paragraph, we see that there are these individuals who are active in Gary's campaign at the time. We got Dairn and Heward and Joydy and Kelanan, Kedum, Merlin, Nolzer, Qual, Tierney. You'll see a lot of those names in the Dungeon Master's Guide attached to magic items, especially really high-end, interesting magic items, which I find is really cool. There are other people, Bucknard, Mordenkainen, Autoluke, Tenzer. They're not as powerful as the Quasi-Deities, and that'll give you some idea of the power level of these guys. Because if Mordenkainen and Tenser don't make the cut, then you got to know these are pretty powerful individuals. It does also, unfortunately, include the comeliness attribute, and this is something that's had a long and controversial history in AD&D. Obviously, when it first came out, yeah, we used it, and no, it kind of faded out after that. This does give the interesting twist on it that only quasi-deities have the comeliness attribute, which is a neat twist and kind of gets around the fact that there was a lot of resistance to it when it was first introduced in Unearthed Arcana. Which, okay, I can see that, even though this kind of came out before then. But so comeliness basically allows the individual with a high attribute score to almost charm people because they're so beautiful. Yeah, okay. I can see why Gary was interested in separating out physical attractiveness from persuasiveness, which is kind of bundled together in charisma. I'm just not sure putting a game mechanic attached to it is really all that necessary, but there we are, and like I say, it's specifically for quasi-deities at this point, so okay. We've got Heward, he of Heward's Oregon. Kedum is in there. He's got the healing balm, I believe. Merlin is in there. It's a pity they don't have the illustrations, because when these were first introduced in Dragon Magazine, there's this great picture of Merlin as almost this Clint Eastwood type figure with the cowboy hat and the six guns and such. Merlin is kind of a special character who can use technology and gunpowder. Even though gunpowder doesn't work anywhere in the world of Greyhawk, he has a special aura that lets him use six guns. And he's also got like a dancing holy sword, and he's a very, very powerful individual. But it's the fact that he has this sort of cowboy aesthetic that really sets him apart. There's also Kelanan, the Prince of Swords, who is actually a step up from a quasi-deity. So he's what's known as a hero deity, and he was created not necessarily for the setting, but as part of the development of this whole idea of these intermediary level type characters between heroes and deities. So what you end up with is you have heroes, which are defined in deities and demigods, and then you've got the quasi-deities, and then you've got the hero deities, and then you've got the true deities, which are the demigods and lesser gods and intermediate gods and greater gods. So you've got this whole progression that goes beyond mere adventuring characters. So, which I think is kind of a neat idea. I've always been fascinated by this. I created my own quasi-deity that appeared in Dragon Magazine. Crovis, who is the folk hero of the Flan race, in the article that I had way back in the 80s, which is, people still, every once in a while I'll get an email about that and, thanking me for it, and have I done anything for, have I converted him to 5th edition or whatever, which I always think is really great that people still remember that after all these years. But I love the idea of the hero deities and the quasi-deities and so forth. So I think there's a lot there that still could be explored in more depth. I'd love to see some beefing up of that kind of intermediate level of individual personage there. And the next section up here is the deities of the world of Greyhawk. I'm not going to go into the individual deities in this video because it's already getting a little long, but we do have the introduction of these standard divine abilities, and these abilities that are also ranked by deity. So greater gods can do these things, lesser gods can do these things, demigods can raise dead 3 times a day, and so forth. So I kind of like that they've fleshed out the powers of gods and demigods and so forth beyond what was in deities and demigods. And when we get to the section on the individual deities, we're going to see where the real ability and flexibility of the game is where you can personalize that cleric class and really make it have a lot of character and a lot of connection to the specific deity rather than just being a generic kind of medievalish Bishop Odo. So anyway, that's what I've got for today. I hope you all enjoyed it, and I hope you all have a great weekend. And if you're in the northeast of the United States anyway, enjoy the great weather. And, if you like the video, please hit the like button. If you'd like to see more of this stuff, please, subscribe. And, if you're feeling extra generous, you can buy a couple of my books over on DriveThruRPG, or you could hit my Patreon, or you could go to my blog and drop something in the tip jar. That's always welcome. And, hey, have a great day, and thanks for listening to me babble on about more Greyhawk. I'm glad to be back.